We have finally discovered the real plan for Israel that Benjamin Netanyahu has been hatching all along, and it is more amazing than we ever anticipated. If you have been feeling uncertain about Israel's future, this episode is for you because everything, and I mean everything, is about to change, but not in the way that any of us anticipated. Welcome to the Mira K Show on JNS TV. Let's dive right in. Okay, so this week, in a surprise press release, Bibi made a historic announcement about an enormous gas deal with Egypt, $35 billion to be exact. Now, besides this being a lot of money, this is actually massively significant for the geopolitical landscape of Israel and marks the beginning of a change so tremendous. But we need to start from the beginning, as we always try and do, because without the context, what I'm saying sounds like kind of gibberish. So up until 2000s, Israel had no natural gas resources of its own. To be exact, we needed to import almost all of our oil, coal, and fuel from other countries. Interesting fact that up until 1979, Iran was our top gas supplier. Then the Islamic Revolution left us scrambling and taught Israel a very important lesson, one that we're still trying to learn till this day. Foreign energy dependence is dangerous, as it can be taken from us at any moment. But due to lack of our own resources, our hands were semi-tied. So we started to diversify where we import gas from so we don't get stuck in a shortage. And so we started to import from many other places, faraway places like Mexico and Russia, even Norway. Diversifying seemed like a good strategic way to protect against complicated diplomatic relations. As we have seen now with military arms, being dependent on other countries for things that our survival depends on is a huge problem. If they don't like us or fall under political pressure to not help us, we are the ones who end up paying the price. This ends up tying Israel's hands on many military and political matters because fuel is essential to the country. Because of this, we tried to avoid countries where potential conflicts were more obvious, like Middle Eastern locations, but with the signing of the Oslo Accords, Egypt became a supplying possibility for energy. It's only in 2004, however, that we started getting gas from them. Why? Well, in 2000, we discovered a small gas field. The fact that we had any of our own was a very big deal, but it was nowhere near enough to sustain the country. Coal was slowly replaced, but we were still dependent on others. We turned to Egypt. Fast forward to 2009, and we find a gas field called Tamar in the Mediterranean that was a game changer. It was big enough for us to power most of our electricity, making it much cheaper for the country, which is very important for then we were very poor and depended on aid from the likes of the US. It also is much cleaner, but most importantly, it drastically reduced our foreign energy dependency. Not completely, but significantly. And then in 2010, the Leviathan gas discovery truly changed the game, being one of the largest offshore gas finds in the world at the time. Now, not only were we no longer needing other countries for energy, but after a few years of complicated monetization and building of this gas rig, which came with a lot of political complications, we actually started exporting gas to other countries, namely Jordan and, surprisingly, Egypt. Having imported from Egypt for so many years, this was a big shift, but we'll get to that in a second. In Israel, though, this discovery did not come without its complications. People were furious at the environmental damage that this kind of excavation causes. It was a highly controversial move to continue investing in it, especially as it took a while to figure out how to make it profitable. Natural resources are something that Israel has struggled with, the most notable one being water, and so the significance of this find can't be underestimated. Remember Golda Meir's famous quote, "Moses took us 40 years through the desert to bring us to the one spot in the Middle East that has no oil." Well, that didn't age very well, but it's interesting to note that Jordan, Israel, and Egypt are so close in proximity, yet have vastly different natural resources. Egypt, for many years, seemed to have been blessed with the energy resources of the area. Obviously, now this is not the case, or they wouldn't be signing a deal with us. And how come? Well, up until 2000s, they had a relatively small population and natural gas reserves that left them with a lot of extra. Then in the early 2000s, they discovered even more gas offshore and decided that to boost their economy, they were going to become major gas exporters. Jordan and many other countries across Europe built their dependencies on Egypt because of its strategic location, and Israel joined in 2005 with the help of the EMG pipeline. 40% of Israel's gas was supplied from Egypt. It was seen as part of our peace agreement with them, a way to bolster relations, a stable long-term solution, and proof of something that would eventually become an example that economic cooperation could override politics. But there was a little bit of a problem with this, because Egypt did not really know how to properly handle its resources. And due to both a population explosion, meaning more demand from Egypt himself, and gas demand skyrocketing demands elsewhere, they quickly hit a snag in their plan as their supplies started to dwindle. Add onto this the real snag in the plan, which was the Arab Spring, a wave of pro-democracy, anti-government protests, and uprisings that seriously destabilized Egypt, and by the way, were pushed a lot by the pro-Palestinian movement. It wasn't just Egypt, it was other Arab countries as well. The gas pipelines that connected Egypt and Israel, and therefore by default also Europe, went and go through the Sinai Peninsula. And that pipeline was blown up more than a dozen times in acts of political resistance. The supply became completely unreliable and also a growing source of tension, especially for Egypt, as the population did not like the government helping Israel. So in a quick and easy political win, they cancelled the agreement in which they were giving us so much of our gas, in what they called a commercial dispute. But we all really know the truth. Quickly, energy prices spiked in Israel, and we learned for the second time how dangerous energy dependency is. But it was a blessing in disguise, as it enabled the push and search to discover our own resources. When we had discovered the Tamar gas resource, it was much more than just a financial breakthrough. It marked the beginning of a security breakthrough for us to move into independence and protect ourselves from political blackmail. It's why our rigs are protected extensively militarily. And this was the status quo that we held in the country for a very long while. That is, until October 2023. To understand the current shift that I will explain in a second, let's take a quick look at Jordan. Because if you have been wondering to yourself why it is that we have had escalations with almost every single Arab country in our vicinity and on our borders, but with Jordan, it's basically been quiet, well, here's your answer. They, Jordan, are one of the most energy-poor countries in the Middle East, and they import over 90% of their gas needs. The cost of this are astronomical and a major threat to their stability. For years, they depended on Egypt like Israel, but when the pipeline stopped working, they too lost access to oil from a nearby source, which meant they needed to pay very high prices, unlike the low prices Egypt had been granting them in return for political stability. When Israel found its new gas resources, Jordan faced a choice. Keep running their country into the ground with crazy prices, blackouts, and instability, or get over their hatred and political issues with Israel and potentially survive. In 2016, we signed a long-term gas deal with Jordan that started in 2020 and supplies 30 to 40% of their gas. They chose wisely. It is not a popular deal by any means, but it has not been cancelled, not even after October 7th, and our borders with them have basically stayed stable. This is not accidental. Remember, there's a massive Palestinian population living within Jordan. Escalations on the borders should have been the total and complete norm. And whilst, yes, we have had a few issues, largely it's basically stayed quiet. And this is because they can't afford to really fight with us. I'll say that I've drastically simplified the geopolitical relationship with Jordan. It's really not this clear-cut. We have a very complicated relationship with them, but even so, it has basically stayed peaceful, which is why when Israel realized that this new resource is not just economically important, but it can also be used for a massive political and military benefit and leverage with potential enemy countries, then this is something we can't just give up on. Keep in mind that despite the fact that we have a peace treaty signed in 1994, this deal with Jordan is purely commercial. But both governments know that it is imperative for the survival of Jordan, and so they do everything in their power to keep the relationship stale. It's what I call an economic deal that actually incentivizes peace. And for a while, I've been wondering if we would see something similar with other countries. Turns out I wasn't the only one, and we are. And how? So let's get back to our Egypt story. In 2015, they find another new gas resource called Zohr, but unfortunately it isn't enough for them, or maybe fortunately, depending on who you ask, and they realize that they are going to need to find a new solution. So they sign an agreement with Israel worth $15 billion. This new deal that has just been announced is an extension of that. Already in August, it was being locked in, but Egypt's ongoing anti-Israel rhetoric and mobilization of tanks and military on the border with Gaza and threats to escalate made Netanyahu threaten to pull out of it. Let's talk about that for a second. Because of the complications in the Israel-Egypt relationship, they have been eyeing a potential gas deal with Qatar. That would be a disaster for Israel. Why? Well, with Egypt expected to be a main partner in managing Gaza, them being indebted to Qatar is not going to be good for Israel. However, if they are indebted to us, not only will Qatar have less influence, Egypt will be much more aligned with Israel's goals for Gaza. Obviously, Egypt is saying this isn't the case. What else would they say? But here, it's expected that this deal might end up being the strongest deterrence in Gaza yet. Remember, it was Egypt that enabled Hamas to rebuild its military arms in Gaza conveniently throughout this whole time. And if they really feel that they can't lose out in a relationship with Israel, that might not happen as easily. The political backdrop for this actually within Egypt is very complicated, as Sisi the president got voted in on a promise to end the power shortages, which is a big part of what brought down the previous president. But he also promised some anti-Israel stuff and pro-Gaza stuff, which he's trying to navigate. The thing is, though, that he has failed on the gas thing and is in urgent need of solving this crisis. Buying from Israel is almost half the price of buying gas from others, but also allows them to short-term rebuild their infrastructure to once again become the main supplier to Europe, which is why they are currently seeking enormous investments into renewable energy. They're expected to reach about 40% renewable energy by 2040 when the deal in Israel is conveniently set to end. As for the details of this deal, well, we'll be exporting up to 130 billion cubic meters of natural gas from the Leviathan offshore field to Egypt under a long-term contract through around 2040, starting in 2026. The gas will be delivered by pipeline using existing Israel-Egypt infrastructure because we don't really have the exporting infrastructure just yet, but with capacity expansions and upgrades planned to handle higher volumes. The suppliers are Chevron, which a lot of people don't like, NewMed Energy and Ratio, whilst the Egyptian buyers receive the gas for domestic use and potential LNG re-export. But the technical details of this are actually not what's important, because this deal doesn't only help Israel financially, with billions of dollars now going back into Israel, which is no small thing, as Israel's economy is, yes, doing much better than anyone thought, but it's getting more and more expensive to live here, and the costs of war have been enormous. An injection of cash is no bad thing, but it's so much more than that. That's kind of where most people have stopped, but this has much more significance. It also stops a military escalation with Egypt, something that we were very much on the verge of, which is the last thing that we need right now. It allows us to have more say in what happens or doesn't happen in Gaza, and it makes us instrumental for Europe's oil from the Middle East, a main supplier of theirs. What we are now seeing is a new era. Economic isolationism and dependency to where the shifts in diplomacy. It's an amazing era, the brainchild of the genius, Benjamin Netanyahu, in which Israel is completely turning the table on how we operate up until this point. We used to rely on deterrence, hoping fear would be enough to keep our enemies at bay. But we learned our lesson, and now we are shifting that to dependency, militarily and economically. We will not be begging countries to defend us. Instead, within their own governments, they will understand that being on good terms with Israel is necessary for their own survival and also beneficial for them. In his press release, Bibi said that there are more surprises coming, and it's likely that we are looking at a similar style with Syria. What's interesting about this kind of agreement is that it's not an overt peace treaty that causes a lot of political outrage within the Arab countries, but rather it's Israel solving problems for these countries in a way that they can't afford to become our enemies, whilst dramatically boosting Israel's economy. The Blue Raman pipeline with Saudi Arabia is another such example. Energy, whilst not oil, for AI and data and internet will be coming from the Middle East to Europe through Israel. Saudi Arabia is a country that may or may not sign a peace deal with us, but it is very invested now in staying on semi-good terms. Both Saudi Arabia and Egypt use these pipelines to reach Europe, and let's not miss the significance of that. Europe, to have to access the Middle East and Asia, will be dependent on Israel. What does that mean for the future of our diplomatic relationships with them? You see, whilst online it seems like all doom and gloom, and there are definitely elements of that at the moment, on the ground, most countries of the world are able to sift through the noise and see a very simple truth, that what Israel has done in the last few years is nothing short of miraculous. That we not only survived against all odds, but we have come out stronger and more victorious than anyone imagined. Even economically, we are now the third strongest economy despite the war. Do you think they aren't realizing that not only do they not want to be enemies with us, but actually they should be our friends? I mean, just on a purely military level, we are signing deals bigger than ever before for arms sales with the likes of Saudi Arabia and Germany, countries within Europe. Just this week, we signed another $3.1 billion deal with Germany to provide them with our Arrow missile defense system as fears over Russian escalations grow. They are the only country in Europe that we have sold this to, and this is the largest defense export agreement we have ever signed. We are even in talks with Greece and Cyprus to develop a rapid reaction force in the Eastern Mediterranean, obviously due to our shared concerns over Turkey. And just FYI, Greece has now deployed Israeli missiles on several islands near Turkey, but that's for another time. We hear about acts of anti-Semitism in Greece, but we don't hear about this. This is the thing. Most of these countries, whilst not in an active war, are in a state of complete disarray. Things are falling apart very, very quickly. And whilst Israel has spent 2 years in a very uncomfortable situation, we're coming out of it and really succeeding in building it. We know how to deal with terror. We know how to defend ourselves against enemy. We've built a system that is beyond unbelievable. And economically, we are growing and becoming better than before. Countries are watching. I think that when we look at this war from a short-term perspective, it's very hard to feel hope. We feel the fatigue and the fear. But when we zoom out away from Twitter, away from the soldiers being injured, and see the bigger picture, it's actually become unbelievably positive. The Israel we know now is going to be drastically different from the Israel we will see in 10 years. I often get asked how I stay hopeful, and it's because I try to zoom out and look at what's really going on. When Bibi says that we learned our lesson on October 7th and that things are changing, this was his plan. Make us so economically strong that we are undeniable. And I, for one, am all for it. The constant oscillation between small politics and bigger picture shifts is essential for us to understand. When I focus on the short term, it's scary. But when I look at the long term, we are on the way to greatness. Take a moment to appreciate that what this man, Bibi, has done for us, how much he has handled and navigated, all whilst keeping his eye on the prize. The war is not yet over, despite him making claims that sound suspiciously like that's his plan. We are seeing escalations with Lebanon heating up, and the summit with Trump and Bibi will probably lead to some form of Iran 2.0 as their ballistic missile capabilities increase. Sisi, by the way, from Egypt, is expected to also be joining a summit with the two to mark this enormous announcement. But all of these escalations, they're temporary, and good things are coming. The deep state is eroding due to October 7th. Our strength is becoming more apparent to the world due to October 7th as well, and our economy will be booming, even more than now, very, very soon. These are exciting times, historic times, and I, for one, am grateful to have this leadership, to have God, and to be living in a country that is now going to be on the forefront of what it looks like to be a Western country that knows how to stand up for itself, defeat our enemies, and be strong in our pursuit for peace. I'm Ira Kay, and I will see you next time.